Welcome, everyone. My name is Tina Burnside, and I am a co-founder of the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery. I'm also the museum's curator. And we'd like to welcome you to the museum's Black History Month conversations. And tonight we're going to have an artist talk from Sean Garrison, who's going to be in conversation with Seitu Jones. And Seitu is going to talk to Sean about Sean's exhibit that is now on display at the museum. And so first I'll do introductions of Sean and Seitu. And then also if you have questions, we'll leave some time at the end for questions. And you can put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section. And then at the end, I'll read off the questions for Sean or Seitu. And then we'll get started after I do the introductions. The African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, where his Dark to Light is on display now through June. Sean is a writer and abstract painter in which both disciplines cross-influence the other, which is represented in his current work in the exhibit. A self-taught artist, he feels that all artists should have a foundational understanding of art, but art feels that he has a duty to say something valuable, add to the public discourse of what needs to be corrected within our society and worldwide community. To paint a pretty picture is not enough. It must be balanced with edification of humanity through gifted to the artist. Sean has shown his work at the Basilica of St. Mary's, Hennepin Gallery, Gamu Gallery, Homewood Studios, and Sean Garrison Studio. He curated an art show, Fade to Black, and established a publishing company, Chocolate River Press. Seitu Jones is an artist and advocate who has been tending the soil of community through art for more than 40 years. Throughout his career, he has harnessed the tools of visual art, infrastructure, and civic engagement to create work that links history to the present and honors the community's assets, from its historic figures to natural resources to cultural traditions. In his public art and events, Seitu pushes beyond traditional art spaces to reach people in the context of their lives and communities. He recently designed a railing for the new 40th Street pedestrian bridge over 35W in Minneapolis. His large-scale sculptural installation, Turnip Greens, was dedicated in 2019 in the Nashville Farmers Market, inspired by the city's bounty of food and Black culture. First enacted in St. Paul in 2014, a community meal convened 2,000 people over dinner at a table half a mile long. Seitu's site-specific art installations for the Twin Cities light rail transit system blend visual beauty with local history. In 2013, he co-founded Frogtown Farm, a 5-acre farm in St. Paul City Park, created with and for neighborhood residents. Seitu is recently retired faculty member of Goddard College in Washington State. He holds a BS in landscape design and an MLS in environmental history from the University of Minnesota. He's been a senior fellow in agricultural systems in the College of Food, Agricultural and Natural Science Resources at the University of Minnesota, and is a member of the Board of Managers for the Capital Region Watershed District. Welcome, Sean and Seitu, and I'm gonna turn off my mic and my video and let you all go at it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tina. But you left it almost like we're going to start battling here. Like this is the Thursday night fights, but no, not at all. Not at all. This is going to be a session filled with love and filled with information about our dear Sean Garrison. And so I'm going to be asking Sean questions to expose his work and his philosophies and vision to all of us who are out here now. And then we're even gonna, during this conversation, we're even gonna look at some of the work and some of the work that's in the installation right now in the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery. And we'll talk a little bit about that, and then take a little bit different path and see a little bit of a video, a small part of a video that really is another aspect of Sean's expansive work and ideas. I wish that we were all in a room together, because I would ask you all to join me in welcoming Sean. But we'll have to wait to do that and to embrace each other at another time. But first, Sean has been in Minnesota for a while, wasn't born here, but I'd like you to talk about your roots, where you're from, and how you came to Minnesota, and what brought you to this point as an artist.
Oh, wow.
A lot of questions.
Oh, hey, I appreciate it, brother. First of all, it's an honor to be in your presence, because you are the Seitu Jones. And so this conversation is a joy for me. And thank you, Tina, and Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery for this platform, allowing people to listen to me talk for a minute. This is pretty dope, as we say. So my story is, brother, is that I'm from Detroit originally. Got here in 1979. People say, man, you Minnesota. And I said, nah, I just live here. I have Detroit roots, right? In Motor City. But, Minnesota is home to a large degree. Came here, mother brought us here, just has, some family issues. So we had to, split town from Detroit, and we came to Minnesota. The crazy thing was, I remember vividly when mother told us we were coming here. I wasn't really big on the geography of the country, still not really huge on it. But she says, we're going to Minnesota. I'm like, Minnesota, where's that? Let's go to Iowa. Why? I did not know why I understood where Iowa was and not Minnesota. But needless to say, not to insult any Iowans, I'm glad I ended up in Minneapolis. So, got here in 79. Actually, I moved back in 92 for a hot second and came back here for one reason or another. So that's kind of the beginnings, right? And seen a lot. We grew up in North Minneapolis and seen probably more than I care to talk about. And just got through a lot of things. So, but the artistic journey, that was, it's like a lot of artists, right? We all say, when I was a kid, I could always draw, And so when I think I was about 4 when I first drew this little superhero thing that I had.
That's the way we all start. I started the same way.
Right, exactly. So, to fast forward a little bit, end up in a dance group, it's artistic, and then I started writing when I was 17. I got my heart broke, didn't want to put the weight of my troubles on my mother, because, she's a single mother raising 3 kids. And so I turned to the pen to speak to what I was going through at that time. And so since then, which is now I'm 53 now, it's about 36 years, I've been writing poetry. And I kind of turned into, I've written screenplays and things of that nature. And so there was that part of me. And I kind of, I put the visual part down a little bit. One of the plans leaving high school was to go to fashion design school. And football lured me away from that. Parsons or Risley didn't have a football team, so that didn't happen. So here we are, 2011, I'm sitting around, pick a paintbrush back up, or 2010, I should say. And as they say, that's kind of where this all began.
What high school?
I went to Minneapolis North for 3 years and Edison for 1, but graduated from North.
Okay. And then what were your inspirations here on the North Side and in Detroit? What did you see that inspired you?
you know, Detroit itself is just a mecca, right? And I tell people all the time, when I hear folks bashing Detroit, I say, well, you know, Detroit, they used to call Detroit like the Paris of the West. You know, now we talking in the 20s when the, you know, automobile industry was booming, but it was the place to be. You know, they had Motown and so on and so forth. And so just that energy, even at a young age, and I came here at a young age, but you could see that, you know, and you could feel that energy, you know, just from the people and just the city. And even going back now, even with all of its difficulties that it's had, and it's done a little turnaround, but even in the blight, so to say, there's a beauty in that. And there's a beauty in listening to the people talking and watching how they walk, you know. And it's really one of the only spots in the country you can see another country, not like that.
That's true.
So there's that. And then here in Minneapolis, you know, just growing up and just seeing a lot of cats in the whole graffiti around when I was a teenager, you know, I dabbled in that. I didn't have the backbone or the courage to go out there, you know, and do something on the wall or whatnot. But, you know, I stayed at home and did what I did. But a lot of my creativity was just on a dance floor with these cats, which is oddly enough.
What kind of dance group? Hip hop dance group or what?
You know, I'm not even certain what you would call it right now. I guess it's kind of like hip hop, you know, but we weren't break dancing. I mean, I tried break dancing once, I almost broke a leg and I stopped. I said, it's too tough for me. But it was more or less like the whole New Edition type dancing and that type of thing. You know, if we could sing, we would have made, you know, probably made some money, but I couldn't sing worth a darn. So, you know, and that was a fun era, you know, going through that whole deal. We did a few big things during that time, which is pretty interesting. So, but also I've always been creative, right? But that's in our blood, right? That's in our people's blood. We just creative by nature. Even those that say, "Well, I can't draw. I'm not creative." Yeah, you are. You just
absolutely.
You just haven't tapped in.
Absolutely. Well, you know, in this grand African creative tradition, there are so many artists, a lot on the north side, a lot in Detroit, who mix mediums. I always maintain that we don't have a word yet in the English language. The closest thing to it is interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, and that is like too much to say. We need a term like hip hop. We need poets like you to help define that or give it a name. But like what you do, I mean, you're just describing dancing, music. You kind of implied about the music, and I need to ask you about that. What music were you listening to at the time that inspired you? What were you dancing to? But the dance, music, poetry, visual arts, blending all those things together. I mean, and you've not even like taken a breath in between them, you know, as you combine and mix all those things, you know. And then for all the folks who are listening now, you know, Sean and I kind of outlined what we were talking about, but I'm gonna throw a surprise on you right now and ask you at some point during this time to bless us with a poem, one of your poems as well too. But kind of getting back to that, like you're mixing up all of those mediums and looking at that as this kind of well-rounded artist. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, it's funny because I didn't go about intentionally or being intentional, I should say, in doing all of these things, right? They kind of just presented themselves to me. And I grew and had an affection for them all. You know, and it took me a while to assume the obligation that comes with saying I'm a visual artist or writer. You know, it came easy for me to say, hey, I dance. That was easy, right? There's really no, at least the kind of dancing I was doing, there was really no big social obligation connected to that. Whereas I feel as visual artists and literary artists and those that actually do advanced, like modern dance, things of that nature, there's a social obligation that comes with that for me. And so it literally took me at least 3 years before I said, yeah, I'm a visual artist. I can paint. I paint a little bit, you know, and it took me even longer, you know, to say I'm a writer. Because there's an obligation with that. If you say you're a writer, people have questions. I didn't think I had the answers for those questions, whatever those questions may be. So I didn't set out to eat this artistic gumbo, so to say. Right? It was put on my plate, and I consumed it. And you know, it's funny because I still feel as if I'm a toddler in all of it. You know, I'm still brand new. There's still some things that I can see mentally that I can't produce on a canvas, or I can't write just yet. It's like it's just playing out there in the middle of the field, waiting for me to come get it.
No, I know the feeling. I go through the same thing myself. And the way you just framed that and stated that, yet, means you're on this path. You know, another thing that we talked about is you were always learning as well, too. You were talking about all these different mediums, all these different techniques that you've picked up and how you continue to learn.
Definitely. You know, to want to stop learning or gaining knowledge, that's when life stops to me. I mean, you just cease to exist. Just waking up to go to sleep, to wake up and go. And who wants to be in that space? You know, one thing that, you know, I grew up on, even it speaks to my writing, is I'm a voracious reader. And I would read and I would read and I would read, and I always knew that even if I didn't have the means to go to, let's say, Africa, right? I could read about the stories of those who've been there, right?
That's right.
And that keeps me hungry to get home.
That's right, yeah.
Until I get the means so I can be home.
The power of the word.
And the power of the word, right? So that has always been important to me. And as I said, this learning thing, I love to learn everything, you know, because it all connects in the end. Right now, my big thing is cryptocurrency, NFTs, and blockchains, and all that. That's mind-boggling in and of itself.
Absolutely.
But even with that, there's a way to bring to marry that with what we already do as artists, right? And so that's kind of my happy space right now, other than reading, you know, the stuff about us that keeps my backbone strong.
I hear you.
So,
well, when people hear your poetry, when people see your paintings, what do you want them to walk away with? What is that experience like? You know, in a little bit, we're actually going to look at some of your work, but if you can even preface it, prepare folks, what are they going to see? With respect to the writing, you know, I've always been, you know, so I'm not, and I had a couple poetry classes, right, in school, and I had this instructor turn me off, and so I dropped the class because he told me my interpretation was wrong. And I was like, that's kind of backwards. So anyway, I said, you know what, later for this class, you know, I wasted some money, and I was okay with that. So at that point, my goal to write was to be able to paint this picture, you know, with words that people could actually see and feel, you know. And even now with this visual piece, it's the same thing. Even with the abstracted work, it's how can I create this stroke or add this color at this particular point, at this particular time, so that when the person seeing this is done, you know, viewing the whole, they feel this, right? And now my academic background, I went to school for marketing and advertising, right? Because that amazed me how someone could write 3 words and convince someone to go out and buy a $150 pair of shoes based on 3 words. And so along the way, I learned a few things on how, you know, design impacts all of that. So I bring a lot of that into my artwork as well. Some of those fundamentals and disciplines, and no one would know unless I say, hey, this is why this is here, this is why this is, you know, this particular size, or this is why I read from left to right, so on and so forth. But I bring all of this, you know, to the party, so to say. So
but I want people to walk away from is just to feel something, you know, beyond just, oh, that's nice, you know, and then just walk on and like, okay, that was cool. I want people to walk away from something, whatever I do, and go, that really impacted me, or that touched me in some kind of way. But what he just said was so heavy that I got to sit and think about this. So I might have to go look it up, you know. So
yeah,
that's what it's about. I mean, because other than that, why, you know, I mean, it's okay to do stuff that looks just great. I mean, I want people to think. You know, I want people to think. So,
well, all the folks who are with us right now will be challenged even by some of your work, and I want to kind of lead into doing a tour, if we can, kind of a virtual tour of the installation that you created that's in the Minnesota African American Heritage Museum and Gallery, along with work by 2 other fellows. And so even before we begin that, let's talk about how you ended up in this space right now. I mean, you're a fellow. Can you tell us about this fellowship?
you know, it was the darndest thing, right? And this kind of speaks to what the exhibit is about and why I call it Abstracproseality. So at the time I was working on this artwork for the University of Minnesota Broadway Clinic on right on almost when you get to Robbinsdale on Crystal, I guess would be Robbinsdale. I get them mixed up.
Robbinsdale,
on Broadway, yes,
right on Broadway.
Yes,
yeah.
Robbinsdale, yes. And so I was working on this artwork, and I hadn't, and I think maybe one day I heard about the fellowship, right? And so I printed out the paperwork, and I'm sitting here going, okay, what am I going to do, right? Because I know, if it ain't new, it's through. So I need to come out. I told myself I need to come up with something that goes beyond what people typically do or typically present. And so I set the paperwork down, and I was still working on this painting, and I came across this old iconography that I created in 2011. It was a tattered sheet of paper with all these old icons on it. And, and since I had done that for years, I was trying to figure out, how do I combine these 2 worlds, my literary side and my visual side, without things looking too contrived, so to say, right? Or like a big advertisement. And so when I found this iconography, it kind of clicked in my head. I said, that's it. I can use this. I'll pitch this with, with my submission, and let's see how it floats. So, to talk about these heavy subjects and create these messages within the message, so that folks will see the image and go, wow, that's heavy. But then when you go through deciphering this iconography, you're like, hold on. This is deeper than I thought it was. So now you find yourself standing there for about 20 minutes to basically receive the painting, right? And so, or the artwork. And that's what the whole concept was. So that's what I pulled together. And the funny thing was, I never forget, because Tina sent me a text, and she said, have you seen your email? And I was watching TV. And I said, no, I haven't. She said, you should check your email. I'm like, okay, this is odd. It was like 7:30, 8 o'clock or whatever it was. So I checked my email, and it was the letter stated that I had received it. And I was numb because I was like, this is the first time, it was like the first time that someone recognized my artistry, right? It was like, we have just opened this, like the ancestors said, hey, we opened the gate for you now. You better handle your business.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And I literally sat there, brother, for had about 30, 45 minutes. I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. I called my mother up. I said, hey, guess what? And she gave me the motherly congratulatory statements and whatnot. And I hang the phone up, and I literally sat there. And I still, it threw me off. It was a good thing, but you know, and so once it sunk in, like, all right, now it's time to get down to business. This is what I said I'm gonna do, and so let's do it, you know. And since then, it's been another thing is that, you know, because I've applied for grants before, right? Well, there's nothing that feels better than being accepted by your people.
Absolutely. No, I know the feeling. I hear you.
Like,
yeah.
Welcome to the dinner. I was like,
right.
wow, I get to sit at the table now.
Yeah.
It was, I'm still kind of just like, you know, so.
And so you were one of, I'm backing up a little bit. This is
1 of 5.
1 of 5, or is it 6 or 6? You know, actually, we'll have to have Tina come back on just to confirm that at some point. But you were one of a group of fellows, the first ones.
Yeah, in our group.
So that is also history.
Right.
And so you have, so folks are going to be following you. Folks are going to be, and not just following you with this next group of fellows, but following your work.
Yeah,
and we'll get back to that again here, because I want to talk about folks that have followed your work across the country. But okay, so and Tina just sent the piece. So there are 4 fellows in residence and 1 history fellow. So right now, for those of you all are watching, I encourage you to go check out the exhibition that is there now with 1 other fellow and 1 other artistic fellow, and the history fellow are sharing that space with you right now. So you have created history here in that space. So now tell us what's in that space, man. Oh, you know, let me back up. As you were describing the icons that you created, your visual language that you sent in that nobody could figure out, I have the sheet right here with Sean's language that's on here, right? That's here. He gives it, if you come and check out the exhibit, you'll get some cues and clues on some of these signs and symbols that you're going to see in some of the work. So give us a tour, man. I know that you've got some work that is queued up and ready to go. So I ask for you folks to be patient out there for this iconography and for these paintings.
All right, let's see. Bear with me, because, you know, my technical skills I'm still working on.
Well, you know, we are all still learning Zoom, man. I don't think there is a Zoom master out here.
Dig that. So I'm gonna do this first now. I'm gonna do this. And I did have these, this would be the first one. I'm going to assume that is up on the screen.
Oh, and I think folks can see this now. And here in the background, behind that rose, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about that.
Definitely.
Behind there, you see some of the icons, this language that this artist has created in this piece that is literal, but it is an abstracted image that is that also reveals his look at the world. So tell us a little bit about this piece without like saying this is, without giving all the specifics and details. Leave some for folks to interpret.
Okay, well, you know, I'll talk about the black rose first, because that's so now I'll try to make this as fast as possible. So I use the black rose. I use it first.
Take your time, brother. We got time.
I dig it. I appreciate that. So I used the image of the black rose when myself and 15 other artists did the Black Lives Matter mural right outside of the museum in July of 2020, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, again, I went into this thing thinking, okay, I need to add something different than what everybody else is doing, and something that means something to me. So I was trying to think of a good metaphor for our existence and our presence in this country, right? And I thought, I said, wow, what better metaphor than a rose, a black rose? Right? Because the rose is a symbol of love, I guess, depending on what color it is.
That's right.
And it's this edified and beautiful flower that folks love until it pricks their finger. And then they want to cuss it out, throw it out, be mad at it, right? And that's how this country, that kind of, to me, that's how our existence is in this country.
Mm-hmm.
This country loves us when we're quiet, when we're docile, when we're accepting of just the status quo. But when we want things to be just or right, then it becomes a problem.
I hear you. So I love that black rose as a metaphor. You can keep layering on that as a poet, man.
Yeah, and so and that's it. If I'm dribbling, catching a touchdown, I'm okay. If I say, you know what, you shouldn't have killed this brother in the streets, then that's a problem. So that's this duality that we have here in America. But the beauty of it is that we still keep shining despite it all. But I held on to that image. I even got a tattoo of this black rose on my arm, right? It's a set of crosshairs, because that's how it is, every day. For at least that's the way I see it.
And so this piece is divided into two halves almost. And so what's on top, what's on bottom there?
Okay. Well, I guess I need to give away I'll give the title away. It's called 100-Year Kinfolk, a welcome letter from Duluth to Minneapolis.
Ooh.
And so what it's an image of is the three brothers that got lynched in Duluth in 1920, hanging from this rose or this moon, and they're speaking to brother George Floyd, who's at the bottom of the painting.
Wow.
And in the bottom half, the colors are that way, because I'm like fascinated with the universe and space. And so in my mind's eye, that's what I see, all these beautiful colors and things and whatnot. And so, yeah, that's them. And one has descended further down and have this close conversation to welcome George home with the rest of the ancestors. I liken the bullet to the modern day noose, like a lot of other people do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what that speaks to, and the poem speaks to that, with them having this conversation, with him. And the crazy thing about even, brother George Floyd's murder and how it pertains to this lynching is that, a lot of folks kind of fixated on that person's knee or his hand in his pocket while he was killing brother George Floyd. But what caught me was his eyes. Because when I saw his eyes, it immediately took me to that image of that Duluth lynching, because there's a cat that's in that image who has that exact same look. Hand is in his pocket, but he has this look like he's enjoying this, and it made me sick, and that's when I knew that this was going to have a different outcome than all these other murders that we've seen of black men on film, right? But it took me straight to this image and that moment in our history of these brothers in Duluth. Excuse me. So my thought was,
it's a powerful piece. Oof.
Yeah. So, that's, and some of that iconography is the beginning of the poem, which people can find on online if they go through the proper steps, and all the info's there.
Good. And that's actually kind of what I was referring to with not telling everything about it. But just to give folks a little hint, that iconography that you see behind him, all those signs and symbols actually make up a poem.
They do.
So let's go to the next one, man.
So let's see. Next image. 2 seconds here. There we go. This is one of my favorites.
as he laughs and springing something else heavy on us.
Yeah. So, this piece is called Founding Fallacy.
Mm.
And it's initially, it was a lot more, I guess I can't give it all away, but it was a lot more graphic than this. And I remember telling Tina, I said, Tina, I'm about to do this painting. It's going to cause a ruckus at the museum. And she just chuckled. and so I was in the midst of, and I kind of talk about this in a minute, but I was in the midst of doing this painting, and I saw this apple. I can't remember if it was on TV or it may have been sitting here somewhere. And this whole different visual and way to execute what I want to say kind of pop forth without being so graphic, so to say, right? Mm-hmm. So Founding Fallacy is based on, what they consider the founding fathers of this country, right? And the fallacy part is that, of what the Constitution is written on and all these famous documents that laid the groundwork for America, but it didn't include us.
Right.
This, it didn't even include women, right? Mm. And then, but we were always at that time 3/5 of a person, or whatnot, but it didn't include us. So that's the fallacy part. So what ended up happening is that since they were all men, all white men, I decided to use this apple and create this male, use a male symbol as a foundation for this image. So all these icons here along this ray, I guess are the initials of the 7 main founding fathers. John Jay, John Allen, Ben Franklin, so on and so forth. And then we have, and actually this is like a phallic symbol, right?
Right, that's right.
Which is why I spell fallacy the way I spell it, P-H-A-L-L-I-C-Y. And you have this African being lynched from it. And the circles within that would be essentially, circles is a symbol of life. I use a lot of circles in my art. And this is to symbolize is life, and it's in our technicolor spirit, which is why they're different colors. And so there's that, and then the moon, of course, when those folks was out there doing what they were doing to us, quite often it was at night. And so that's that piece.
That's powerful, man. I'm gonna ask you to stop sharing the screen, and because I want to ask you some questions, on this point here. I actually want to not necessarily go in another direction, but want to ask you, today I went to the reviewal service for Amir Locke. And, once again, we lost another young brother to police violence. And it pains me to see that happen over and over again, as well as the brothers who pass at the hands of other brothers.
Right.
But you, like so many of us, wanted to speak out, in particular after George Floyd was murdered. And you mentioned the mural, the Black Lives mural that the museum commissioned that was right there on the streets, right outside the museum. But you did this piece that was right around the time that George, well, actually, I'm going to stop. I'm going to let you talk about the George Floyd experience. Tell us all about it.
Well, you mentioned, Amir, that happened to him, to that brother. And the first thing I thought of was Fred Hampton.
That's right.
You know, y'all know who Fred Hampton is, Googling and
Yeah.
Google story. Whew. And so seeing that, you know, and I know, and the crazy thing is I know his father. I know I've met his father. We've had conversations, and I didn't realize that was his son until a few conversations later. So, and I watched that video now probably about 20 times, like I've done them all, because it keeps me close, and it impacts my art. And I've learned just the way I funk, the way I paint is the most beautiful things or the most impactful works that I do is when I'm in pain. And so I seek that space out when I really need to get down to business. You know, I actively go look and go, okay, that's the spot. If that means I have to look at Laquan McDonald, Samir Rice, Philando, Oscar Grant, you know, so on and so forth. We could talk about Walter Scott, Terrence Crutcher, Alton Sterling. We could go on forever.
Say the names. Ain't that a trip?
Stephon Clark. And so, you know, but seeing, you know, Brother Amir being murdered like that, it was the weirdest thing. I was totally numb. And then, you know, then my artistic mind started to go off. I had a couple ideas. Still might do a couple things, but it's as an artist, you have to say something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with Brother George Floyd, when that happened, and I watched that, and you know, I'm sitting here nauseated, and I'm looking at this thing, I won't give it a name, treat this brother like he was nothing more than the concrete he laid on. That sickened me, right? At that point, I knew that it was going to be a totally different experience, even for America, right? Because not only did we have to look into the eyes of this killer, America had to look at the eyes of the killer as well. Whereas
That's
it
right.
it was never forced to do that in these other murders, right? You couldn't make any more excuses. You couldn't even try to look for the back door to say, well, maybe he did, and maybe no, because you saw right here, and the way, you know, and I believe God has some mysterious ways of making things happen. The world was stopped at that moment. People didn't have a choice but to sit and watch TV. The pandemic put everything on still. That's what I call it. It was on pause. And so America had to look at their brother, their uncle, their cousins, their nephew, their son in the face of this guy. You know, this thing that literally choked the life out of another human. And I knew then that this country wasn't going to wake up the way it was going to wake up, because you can't shake that. You know, you can't shake that emotion behind that. And they couldn't shake it. They shook it with Trayvon, and they didn't see that. They heard it.
Right.
You know, they shook it with Walter Scott. You know, that's probably an excuse that he must have done something. Why is he running? That's what they all say. Why are you running? This brother wasn't running. This brother literally got the life choked out of him. And so, so in seeing that, I knew it was going to be something, and it was. And as an artist, you know, I had to figure out, okay, what do I do next? You know, what do I do next? Because I think I told this when I did the live show. I'm too old to throw a brick. At least that's what I'm gonna say publicly, right? But I'll throw some paint. So and so at that point, and watching, you know, and being in St. Paul for quite a few days, keeping an eye on one of my friends' stores or whatnot, watching everything go up in smoke till 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning. It was it was the most beautiful thing to me. You know, I said, you know what? The only thing we know this country listens to is money. It's the bottom line, right? And I'm sure a lot of those companies, businesses didn't give a hoot because they had insurance. I probably made more money during that week than they did the year prior to that because of the pandemic, right? Sounds crazy, but that's the way I rationalize.
Yeah.
But for those that I knew weren't opportunists, because there were certainly those there, it was one of the most beautiful things I've seen. You know, and folks, how can you say that about a riot and about an uprising? I said, it's not a riot, it's a love rise, right? I think I mentioned this when you and I were talking.
That's right.
People don't hate buildings. People hate inequality. People hate you treating us like dogs, right? People hate you killing us in these streets and there's no consequence. So people love humans, right? So people rose up out of love. That wasn't hate. So I call them love risings. And so watching this love rising take place, I loved it. And then, you know, to see so many young folks out there, I'm like, you know what, thank you. Because a lot of us old heads, folks that become just too wishy-washy with things, too laid back, like I don't have to pick this torch up no more. You know, when we all have, if nothing else, support these young folks in doing what they're doing. We don't have to agree with it, but we damn sure need to support them, right? That's the way I see it.
Yeah.
So after that, I had to figure out, you know, the way my mind thinks. I said, what can I do next as an artist? And so I made a decision that when that thing's trial was going to come up, I told myself, one, I thought, I know it's going to go left. I know the Twin Cities is going to burn again. And there needs to be someone out here documenting this passion through art beyond the camera. So I had plans to go out and pitch my canvas up right in the middle of what would look like a war zone. I had my gas mask ready. I had my gas mask and guide. I had the G&G connection, right? And I figured, you know what? No one's gonna hurt an artist. I'm just painting. But so that was the plan. And I had, you know, the plan was to go out here and do a painting each night. I figured we'd still be going for this. I thought I had like a 30 or 40, you know, piece exhibit by now. But and so, you know, that was the plan. And what happened was, ended up getting a call the day the verdict came in. To fast forward a little bit, I got a call from this reporter I had met maybe 2 weeks prior and told him what the plan was. He said, hey, you plan on doing what you said you're gonna do. So what you talking about? He said, the verdict's coming in today. I said, I'll meet you there. And so I went down to the government center and just began to paint. And when that verdict came in, now the piece started off, it was dark. It was just, I knew, I said, let me get a head start on this, because once this goes left, I might not have too much time to finish this.
You know, one of the things that you're describing, and we're going to get to this in a couple minutes, but is that you were live painting. You were painting in front of an audience. You were picking up the vibes and the energy from that whole space that you were in and painting that.
Definitely. You know, and that's typically how I paint in large part. You know, it's based on, now don't get me wrong, there's some things that I plan out, right? As far as it might be a particular color palette or some flow of the artwork that I want. I may sketch that out. That's how I want things to flow. But in the end, it always ends up organic. I hear you. And so, and now don't get me wrong, I can do some realistic work. It takes a little longer to know, because I get OCD with that. So I sit down and be real meticulous. But I've done it. If people want a photo, want to write me a check, sure.
But well, on that note, the reporter that really picked up on this was a nationally known correspondent. Yeah, so this is how, oblivious I am to, I'm not saying pop culture, it's news in general. So when I'm there, this gentleman comes up to me and
and wants to do his report, wants to ask me a few questions. I noticed he's with MSNBC. I'm like, all right, solid, I'll talk. So I'm talking to the guy, and his producer says, hey, we'll be back. Will you still be here? We're gonna see the end result. I'm like, sure. And so he leaves and comes back. He does this other clip, and we talk. I don't know what's going on the other side of, of his mic. And so he gets done with the piece. He goes, hey, he said, Chris Hayes wants to buy your painting. I'm like, who's that? I'm thinking it's Chris Wallace, the older cat with the dark hair.
Right, I hear, I know.
I'm like, all right, So I said, all right, He said, well, I may make the connection. So, and then when he gets off the air, we're talking, and I told him, I said, I think I'm gonna auction this off. He says, I think that might be a good idea. He said, because you might be able to make a lot more doing that than just selling to Chris. Because my thinking was, because I got offered quite a bit of money for that paint. I got offered $100,000 for that paint that day.
Mm-hmm.
I declined it.
Right.
Right. And so, because I figured I could auction this piece off, get enough cash, enough seed money to start a program to get some of these brothers off the block in North Minneapolis. That's still the goal. That's still the goal. And so he tells me that, I'm like, oh, cool. My mother texts me, she goes, you know Chris Hayes? I said, who's Chris Hayes? And she breaks it down. She said, yeah, he said he wanted to buy your piece. I said, oh, that's cool. Because I'm still kind of oblivious of who this guy is. So when I saw the clip, I was like, wow, this guy actually said that on national TV, right? So that was pretty hip. That was pretty hip. And then the paint went up for auction. And it didn't sell at the time. And that's okay, because that was God's plan. And so now I'm just mapping out the next move with the paint. It's called walking on air, So so that's that piece.
Okay.
Now what was born out of that, you may have been about to action this, what was born out of that is this live painting, Heaven or Hell, that I did. It was kind of to bridge the gap between that point and this auction thing. And that was just to encompass the energy I felt and what I felt in those 3-4 hours of doing this painting into an hour show. And that turned out to be pretty miraculous. A lot better. It was miraculous. I'd never done it, right? I'm that cat who just jumps off the ledge and figure out if I go splat, I go splat.
That is such a story, really, and we could spend a lot of time doing that, but the time has really almost slipped away from us, and we need to give some time for questions. One of the things that I apologize for is that we also had queued up his other self, and I'm going to have to encourage you all to check that out. And also in this grand African tradition of painting live, he has created this whole experience that you got to check out. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Tina here so that she can.
Show the video.
Actually, she said we can show the video. Let's show the video. Okay.
Hopefully, let's get this right, Sean.
Yeah, really, this is, yeah. So thank you all for hanging with us. This is live webcasting, so you never know what's gonna happen.
Right, dig that.
But to give it a little context, I saw Tacumba's name is here on the list of folks who are out there. Tacumba, Douglas Hewitt, Peyton, who is doing, right now as we speak, is doing a live painting. All of these folks have been up on stage, as well as a bunch of other Black folks and other folks that paint live. There's a brother from Houston that during George Floyd's going away service here painted live during the funeral. Now, here, I'm going to shut up. And watch this.
I'm gonna slide through. I'll go through the intense moment of the show.
The looting starts, the shooting stops. The looting starts, the shooting starts.
Can you see that?
Minneapolis on fire. In the distance, the police at the fire ever trying to disperse this crowd. Hundreds of protesters have gathered here.
And so you've got choreography here. Music is also a part of this, and you end up with this piece.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. A little spoken word. And these young folks, they did the production, which is great.
You know, I mean, this really is a performance piece. This is really blending all of those traditions, all of those mediums together here, man.
It was pretty intense, man. It was, you know, the odd thing is that I knew once I started that I would get lost in it. And I wouldn't even notice I was being watched by all these folks. And listen, at a particular point of the soundscape, I knew it told me, I was like 10 minutes left. I couldn't believe how fast that time went. And so it was and I haven't seen this in months, but yeah, this is
and you know, also in this grand African tradition, just like an African artist, masking and the costume. You were tell us a little bit about those coveralls. Those ain't just like a pair of Oshkosh.
No, not at all. So the overalls, my lady, who has supported me through all this, which is a beautiful thing. That's a whole nother conversation.
Can't do it without family, brother.
No, not at all. So I was telling her I was looking for, I need some overalls. And she told me of this designer, this, you know, that she knows. And so I went and talked to the woman, her name is Stevie. And I said, this is what I need, right? So she measures me up. I go pick them up and I'm like, wow, these like some European cut overalls. I'm like, I can't plow no potatoes in this.
That's right. For one purpose. Yeah.
And so, you know, and part of the reason why I made them white is in my head, I said, you know what? I'm gonna turn these things into art. What I'm doing is art. And so I'm putting paint all on them and whatnot, you know. And so it turned out great. And, you know, I've done three shows, live paints last year. And for each one, I get a brand new pair of overalls, you know, custom made and custom fit.
Well, all of us who are here have to be in the first row. Well, next time you do it, or maybe I should be like in the 4th or 5th row, so I don't get to paint as a part of that experience. But all of us need to experience this thing.
You know, to that, well, I'll talk about this live paint in June. I'll talk about that last. You know, speaking about the front row, yeah, you're gonna have to be in the front row, brother. That one, but I'll be quiet so we can have some folks.
Yeah, let's get some questions here from folks. Thank you for your patience, Tina.
Oh, sure. That was amazing. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Seitu. If people have questions, you can put your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. There's one in the Q&A, and this is from Beverly Cotman. Thank you, Beverly, for being here tonight. How do you creatively respond to this quote by Nina Simone? You can't help it. An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times.
How do you respond to that quote? First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Ms. Cotman, Mrs. Cotman, for being here. She was my biology teacher in high school.
North High.
North High till I die. that quote, I mean, it's very apropos, right? I mean, it's something that as artists, we have to respond to the times. You know, as a quote I have, you know, on my webpage, and I tell the artists, you know, to paint something beautiful, only something beautiful, that's like a dereliction of your artist's duty. Because we have this talent that, you know, God has gifted us and has afforded us this platform that people actually listen to what we're saying and what we're doing. And we have to use that to edify humanity and dang sure talk about our situations, whatever art form that is, and however you decide to do that. But to do it just for financial sake and say, hey, this is great, and walk away from it, when you know there's someone, you know, in the background who wants to be heard, and they can't speak or they don't know how to speak, but we have the ability to speak for them and through them, or them through us, then we're supposed to do that. We have to do that. I mean, if I didn't feel that way, I would stop doing art, because it would become, what's the point? You know, what's the point? And we as a people have enough to reflect on and see that we have to speak. And art is one of those few things that actually, in my opinion, changes people, because people have to deal with art in their own space. You don't have to worry about being judged or people coming at them in a certain way. You can take what you get and sit with it on your own, and hopefully become a better person or human because of it. So
We have another question or a comment. Oh, there's a couple that are coming in. So from Miss Queen Perfectly Flawed has asked, I just wanted to say thank you humbly. I love you, brother. I'm so proud of you, King. Thank you for being a leader in these experiences. All of our leaders don't stand at podiums. Thank you.
That's right.
appreciate it.
And then there's a question from Diane Leonard. Would love to hear your thoughts on how to best honor and preserve the art created around the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as the murder of George Floyd.
I think, you know, I think the efforts that are being activated now are perfect, because I would say that I hope that people are doing this from a righteous space in their heart. I think the best way is to, if we could find, you know, I think there are some people doing this, trying to activate or find a space or a building to preserve some of the art. I think that'd be a great way to honor Brother George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. Within your homes, you can speak on it, you know, speak things to be, continually speak on it. To forget about Brother George Floyd's murder, or treat it as if when that did happen and that's in the past. Now that's wrong of us to do, I think. I feel that anything that we can do to preserve it is vital, you know. And in the end, if we can come together as a collective, you know, and say this is how we're going to do this, knowing that there are some forces out there that don't want this to happen. We just stay diligent in making it happen. I don't think, you know, the best way, I'm not certain what that is. If I had, you know, $1 billion, there would be a museum 50 blocks long with every piece of art created as a response to Brother George Floyd, from here to Budapest, you know. But yeah, shoot me an email. We can have coffee and figure it out.
Well, we have some more questions. And here's a question that I'll pose to both of you. What artists have inspired or influenced your work most? And that's from Miko.
Ooh.
Oh. You know, I need to give a big shout out to Miko as well. His work is very inspiring. Just watching him, and it's gone back and forth. His brother is one of my contemporaries, and I really, he comes from, the brother who sent that question also should be given some time in a venue like this to answer that question as well, to turn it back on him. But there have been a whole slew of folks that came before me, and I see myself in this line of artists that connects us all the way back to the continent of Africa. I was fortunate, Takumba and I were both fortunate, and we're at an age now to have overlapped a lot of the folks that came up during the Harlem Renaissance. You know, so we knew some of those artists, watched them work even, you know, all along the way. So, you know, all of the giants of the time, Jacob Lawrence, Ramir Bearden, Betty Saar, you know, on and on and on and on. And as well as musicians and music, and all of those things are wrapped up together for me. But I'm going to shut up, and we need to really hear from Sean.
I mean, my answers are a lot similar to yours in that, especially being a self-taught artist, right? And I have a thing for due diligence and doing my homework. So I've studied and looked at a plethora of Black artists. You know, I mean, and we'd be sitting here till next week this time. If I even start to name them, then I'll miss someone. I'll feel bad after the fact. So I won't even start naming people. But I'll speak of those who are closest to me that I can touch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those that are local, the Seitu Jones, of course, and Tacoma, y'all like the top of the totem pole here as far as Black.
No, be careful, because somebody can chop that pole down.
Right,
We'll be the first ones
and
to
that's probably true. But as far as I can tell, and I remember, one thing that kind of taught me I don't say taught me, but I'll just say inspired. I remember I used to live on 12th and Knox. And Charles Caldwell, when he was a thin brother, I'm not sure how old the cat was at the time, I was a little dude, he used to walk up and down the street with his portfolio and his suit daily. Right. And I would see this brother and I'm like, who is this cat? Like, what's up? And so every time I see him, I mention that. And it showed me that, man, this cat is passionate about what he does. All right, that's one thing I know about all the artists that I know. Folks are passionate about what they do. And we as artists, if we could create 25 hours out of the day, we would. And it's a beautiful thing. But it's a ton of visual artists, writing from a literary standpoint. Gosh, I mean, Nikki G, Pablo Neruda, Langston, Etheridge Knight, so on and so forth. I mean, geez.
On that note, Tina, how much time do we have left?
Well, we have we're
gone overtime.
Yeah, we're over time, but we have one more question that comes from Takumba Aiken. And
no hard questions, Takumba.
And Takumba asks, do you think that your artworks are like a lighthouse that can reveal future possibilities?
I'm going to let Sean answer that. And then I think we should close with one of your poems.
Okay, so a lighthouse. Yes. I think I would say lighthouse to the effect that it illuminates where we have been. Right? And to allow us to force us to see some things that we may want to have forgotten to see because it hurts too bad. But we have to see these things to keep us going and to not become anesthetized with what we think we see. Right. And so, even throughout this this exhibit, when it initially started, I had about 50 different ideas and thoughts, and I had to whittle that down and whittle it down some more. And then some of that stuff didn't even make the cut because something else popped up. But I think I would hope that it allows people to see their way backwards, to go forwards. Mm-hmm. Right. And even the second round of paintings that will be put up in April, there's one or two pieces that are that's more lighthouse to the forward thinking and more hopeful. But but yeah, it's just illuminate where we come from and the things that we face as a people. And, you know, and through all of that, you know, I recognize, and I hope that we all as Black folks especially recognize that we're just super awesome. We're super dope. Because we're like walking miracles, each and every one of us. You know, we've been through and we continue to go through the grind, but the blood that's in us has been, they say, aged like fine wine, you know, and we just sipping on the past of our people's greatness. And so, I mean, so doing that, I go, wow, we survived all of this.
That's right.
And we still here, which is why a large part of folks still hate us, because they can't understand how can we constantly step on these folks and they still shine, you know? And that's so magnificent to me. So during the process, it just hurt. It got dark at times doing this work, but it also reminded me how far we've come and how much further we can go if we just use the fuel of the past. You know, they talking about electric cars and all that. They just think of Black folks, how we got here, and feed. We feed off that. There's no limit to where we can go.
That's right.
You know, so anyway.
So do you want to close it out with one of your poems, Sean?
Yeah, let me look it up here. Let me find something. I had it pulled up. I'll read something from the exhibit.
And also, I just want to let people know, if they come to the museum to see the exhibit, there's a QR code where you can access then all of the paintings and the entire poems that are written within the painting.
Let's see.
While we're waiting, Tina sent this note out early. The artists in residence are Sean Garrison, Kahar Brown, Ransaw, Noah Lawrence, Holder, Maya Lee Hartman, and the history fellow is Micah Anders.
Let's see. No, I'll just read this piece. It's the 100-year kinfolk. A welcome letter from Duluth to Minneapolis. We live here now, the three of us, spirits dangling, wafting between the leaves. We remain to heal the branches. They hurt. Accessories to a crime they were forced to do. This is all connected, as we are all natural. The blind men that brought us here like broken ornaments to hang on America's tree are the same that removed their relatives for advancement. And now you, dear George, have you seen the picture? 35 to 40 men smiling as if they were Cheshire cats looking for dead mice, posed for the pictures where we were the subjects. Their eyes consumed our lifeless state. Now the roots after them begin necrotic and must find soils to grow in lands where the sun rises true. You see, they expected us to be dead, yet now we write this to you. There was a particular set of blue eyes that tawdry night. We noticed they relocated further south in Minnesota 100 years later on the face of the man whose knee caressed the intonation of your mother onto the urine you released beneath the pig trough. The curtains never closed on them. His chest never moved, hand in pocket as if he was looking for the same length as where he got his eyes from. I write this to you, my dear brother George, for no other reason than to say we are related. Welcome to the reunion. Sincerely, Elias, Elmer, and Isaac.
Wow.
Wow.
So, what I will mention, in June, now I won't mention that yet. Yeah, I'm gonna mention.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in June, you know, you have to do this. I'm doing this community engagement piece. It will be another live paint. It's called The Darkness in My Skin. It's kind of a double entendre, I guess, right? And I'm working on doing this thing at the Ordway. And I'll be painting 20 dangling bodies.
Oof.
I would be basically in a sea, like a mass lynching. And as opposed to canvas, I'll be painting these bodies. Be about an hour and a half long show. I have a composer, Wes, is composing the show. It's gonna be heavy. And I would like to have every seat filled at this place, you know, COVID providing. It's gonna be heavy, and we're gonna have a conversation after the fact because people are gonna need to decompress. And we're gonna have to cry a little, laugh a little. I know I'm gonna be a hot mess midway through, but it's something that has to be done, something that I have to do to help soothe my soul and to feel as if I'm, earning my space while I'm here on this planet. So there's a darkness in my skin in June. It's gonna happen. So
We'll be there, brother.
everybody will know. I appreciate it. Oh, I say too, I'm working on this book for the show. I need you to write the foreword, brother.
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
Of course. Of course. And actually, you know what I'm gonna use? I'm gonna write it using this iconography here.
Okay.
Beautiful. Well, we have to end here. We have gone over time a little bit, but it's hard to cut it off when we're having such an interesting and well-needed conversation. I want to thank Sean and thank Seitu for this discussion, and Sean for your work, and Seitu for your long career of work. And everybody, I also want to thank everyone who took the time to join us here for this conversation. And this will be recorded, so we will be posting it once I figure out how to do that. And so just want to say thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.
And thank you, everybody, for coming out.
Thanks again. Thanks for all your love and support.
Indeed.